that they're looking at. I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se. I think there are a lot of tough issues that our country is facing.
Does this mandate make sense?
That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. That means a civil, contextualized conversation with perspective.
CBS News. Face the
Today, I'm proud to use my authority under the Antiquities Act to protect almost 1 million acres of public land around Grand Canyon National Park as a new national monument.
Should I do the debate?
Joe Biden is coming into office has allowed for more than 6 million folks to cross our border illegally.
They've found their way to get themselves into an August election, basically to take the power of the people away from them.
Hello, I'm Weijia Jiang in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. President Biden and former President Trump are both on the road tonight, making their pitch to voters, while the D.C. grand jury was spotted at the courthouse. Today, just days after former President Trump was arraigned in the January 6th case. In Arizona today, President Biden touted his climate policies. He is also attending 2 campaign fundraisers in New Mexico tonight. Meanwhile, Trump called President Biden a, quote, compromised candidate during a speech in New Hampshire. He also criticized the criminal cases against him and had this to say about a possible 4th indictment.
Now they'll come after me even a little harder, but I don't know how many more. How much harder can they do it? I should have 4 by sometime next week.
For more on this, Caitlin Huey-Burns and Finn Gomez join us now. Caitlin is a CBS News political correspondent. Finn is CBS News' political director. Great to be with you again. The last time we were here, Trump was indicted. As we just saw, he is now using this as a campaign pitch. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at this campaign. And we've seen that he has really faced no consequences from voters for this and no consequences really from his Republican rivals. They still are reluctant to criticize him on these indictments. Yes, you have a couple of candidates who have been critical of him. Chris Christie was on our air today, really kind of trying to push that forward. But when you look at the broader field, they really haven't really taken him on. I think that's a big question of whether that happens on the debate stage. And he also is, asking voters whether he should show up for that.
I'm glad you brought up the debate stage because he also talked about whether he was going to participate or not. Let's take a listen.
They're all saying, is he going to go into the debate? And I say, I don't know. If you're leading by 50 and 60 and 70 points, do you do that or not? I don't know. Should I? Okay, you ready? Poll. We take a free poll. Should I do the debate?
Finn, you have some potential GOP candidates who are, begging to get on the debate stage and they can't make it. And here's Trump saying, I don't know, it might not be for me. I might ignore it. I mean, what is the strategy here? Do you think that he could miss out on something, or do you think that he's just fine if he doesn't go?
I think Trump is having a little bit of FOMO, honestly, or potential FOMO if he doesn't go on the debate stage. But at the same time, there is a strategy to this. I think if he, like he said, I think if he does show up and his what he calls the JV squad, when he's so up by such a wide margin, 40, 50 points, like if he goes there, will he elevate the rest of the field? Will he elevate the criticism by his rivals like Chris Christie or Mike Pence even, who may come after him, like even on January 6th? At the same time, what I'm hearing per sources close to the campaign is there is a consideration that he may attend. At the same time, it's kind of up in the air, right? So also, I just want to point out something that Chris Christie said to CBS News a couple of days ago, and that aired on Sunday morning, was that that Trump is a tease. Part of this is like a suspense to build up the suspense. Will he or won't he? And he's doing that even addressing to the crowd. I think it's part of it. It's part of this Trump maneuver that he often does.
Well, if he does, he will face off against his former vice president, who we just learned today made the cutoff. And so he reached the threshold for having 40,000 donors. Is that right? for as one of the criteria.
Right, exactly. And that is kind of the amazing thing. There was a question about whether the former vice president would make the debate. Now he has. And actually, in announcing it, the campaign took a shot at Trump, saying that Trump should have the courage to show up. And I think that's going to be a fascinating dynamic, because here you have, going back to our conversation about the indictments, here you have a key witness in this January 6th case who could be on stage with Donald Trump, his former boss, now rival. I think that's why a lot of people will be watching what Pence has to say in this debate, even if Trump doesn't show up.
But Finn, what does it say about Mike Pence that 7 other Republicans made it onto that stage or to qualify before he did?
Some Pence advisors, they say that he had a shorter runway, right? He got into the he actually jumped in a little bit later. However, he does have an uphill climb here. I mean, if you look at his latest poll numbers, he's far behind Trump and even far behind DeSantis in most places. His really hope is really that equalizer, the potential for an equalizer on a debate stage with his former ticket mate. But, again, he's got a long way to go to get even close to the current frontrunner.
And we are a long way from this, but whoever clinches the nomination is going to go head-to-head with, obviously, President Biden, who is out west right now. He's talking a lot about his climate policies, which a recent poll shows that most Americans don't approve of his handling. 57%, in fact, of those polled disapprove of Biden's handling of climate change. Do you guys think that's going to be a big issue in a general election based on all the reporting that you have so far about what voters are looking for?
I think it's interesting in terms of the Biden campaign, because they're going to have to really gin out their base of support and get them excited about this campaign. You have all of the attention right now in a Republican primary, Republicans trying to figure out who their nominee is going to be. But you do see in a head-to-head Donald Trump and Joe Biden neck and neck in that New York Times poll. Again, way too early, so early. We don't have a nominee yet. But that is going to be a challenge for the Biden folks, especially as there's so much oxygen being taken up by Trump, and you have Biden trying to be out there promoting policies, and if they're not resonating, that continues to be a challenge.
I spoke to a source close to the Biden-Harris campaign who says there is a contrast and a reason behind why President Biden is in Arizona. Remember, as you both know, it's a big, big battleground state in the general election. And while there's this, quote, circular firing squad on the right with Republicans, President Biden is out there being presidential. That's part of the strategy. That's part of the message. And he's focused on governing. I think that is a contrast that they think they can build on and assemble the strategy, a major part of their game plan for the reelection.
Right. I think a big part of their strategy, from my reporting and to campaign sources, is already drawing this very clear distinction between Biden and Trump. So here we are having a rematch, even though, as we've been talking about, we're still far away from knowing exactly who the Republican nominee is going to be. Of course, Ron DeSantis hopes it's him. He has another shakeup that I want to talk about because he just replaced his campaign manager after laying off about a third of his staff. So what's going on with that campaign?
Yeah, this is the third shakeup in less than a month. Of course, as we've been saying, I know there's a long time between now and Iowa, but the idea that you are having, the third iteration of a campaign shakeup, this at the very, very top of your campaign, you don't switch up your team leadership if you believe that you are doing well. And we've talked about this before, but we've seen this race be really stagnant. Ron DeSantis was supposed to come into this race well-positioned with a super PAC behind him, laying a lot of the groundwork. We've seen that they've had to spend a lot of money. There was a lot of finger pointing at the campaign manager for that, especially from donors wanting to see some kind of change. Now this is an actual leadership change hitting the top levels.
And whether we're talking about Biden or DeSantis, we keep going back to what appears to be an agreement that Trump is the one to beat. I mean, do you think that's still the case despite all the criminal trouble that he could face?
Yes, I mean, he is. I mean, you look at his latest polls, and he's still increasing his strength, frankly. At this point, there's, it's about 160 days until the Iowa caucuses. It's really not that far. And just one quick point on Ron DeSantis, I do think, speaking to some Republican donors today, one alluded to the fact that it's like switching pilots in the cockpit when you're like halfway through your flight. It's a big change. This is significant. And if they don't right this ship, if they don't right this narrative, it could be it could be potentially just, there's no way of coming back up, especially when you're facing Donald Trump, especially when you're facing where he is right now, so high in the polls. It's hard.
And it's an acknowledgement too, right? That this is not working, whatever they are doing. And as much as they were trying to kind of show that they were combating the media narrative, as they say, replacing your campaign manager is an acknowledgement that whatever you've been doing has not been working.
And this sort of gives them a little time before the first debate, which is just 2 weeks away. So talk to me about what the various campaigns are banking on when it comes to this debate, what they hope to get out of it.
Right now, they just want to make the debate stage, and those, and I think, like you said, there's 8 that are probably going to make that stage, including Mike Pence. There's some others who may or may not make it, and and I think if you don't make that stage at this point, I mean, where else can you go? I mean, there's really no comeback from that. So this is a huge marker for these presidential campaigns at this point in the race.
And supporters of Ron DeSantis have even said that he needs to have a really good debate to put kind of all of these questions behind him. The focus is going to be on him more so than any of these other rival candidates.
It can make a candidate, it can break a candidate. So we will be watching and I'm sure talking to you after. So thank you both for joining us as always. Senator Tim Scott's presidential campaign is making a big investment in Iowa, but he's still down in the polls. Next, we'll speak with the co-chair of a super PAC supporting his bid. You're streaming America Decides.
If it's important to our nation,
I wonder how you think about where America is at this moment.
it's on Face the Nation.
Can there be stability if Vladimir Putin remains in power?
Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan on CBS.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And it becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, oh, we're going to tell you about that, too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
the threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Let's bring in our partners at the Weather Channel.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battery lamps.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
Feel the forecast, streaming on CBS News.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
The carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Not one more child!
School shootings have parents fighting mad.
I promised my daughter I was going to fight. It's going to keep on happening.
And teachers taking lessons in how to fight back.
This is an exercise.
We approach it as it's you or them.
It shouldn't have to be your teacher's job to protect your life.
But will the battle over gun control,
people are afraid that they're going to lose their gun rights altogether,
be the hardest lesson of all?
The exercise, you're having to shoot at an adult. Are you prepared to have to kill one of your students?
Guns in the Classroom, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She's the most successful alpine skier, male or female, ever, and a worldwide inspiration.
We need a lot of women doing sports really, really well.
The story of Michaela Schifrin's game-changing reign at the top of the slopes when we go person to person.
Welcome back to America Decides. Few 2024 GOP presidential hopefuls are bringing in the kind of cash that South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is. But no other candidate is spending it as quickly as he is either. According to the latest FEC filings, Scott's campaign is the only one spending money faster than it's coming in. It is important to note a sizable portion of Scott's war chest is left over from his Senate race. Former Republican Senator Cory Gardner joins us now. He is currently the co-chair of a super PAC backing Senator Tim Scott's 2024 presidential bid. It is so great to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
So as you well know, the money is pouring in for Tim Scott, but he's also spending it quite fast. Is that turning into votes, do you think?
Well, it certainly is. And all you have to do is look at the polling, whether it's Iowa, New Hampshire, you see it in the national polls as well. This is a candidate who came from 1% to double digits right now and is gaining on other candidates. And I think the telltale factor of what's happening in this race is who is pointing their attacks at who. And right now, they're turning their guns, their attacks on Tim Scott. And that's simply because he is doing well. He is getting those voters. They see his fundraising, and that's having a tremendous impact in these early states.
He is certainly gaining in the polls, but the latest New York Times Siena College poll that came out last week shows that Donald Trump is at 44%, Ron DeSantis at 20%, and Tim Scott sits at 9%. So he's still trailing quite a bit. What do you think the turning point is going to be for him to, be on DeSantis or Trump's heels?
Well, look, I think the turning point is Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, the early states that will be going to primaries and caucuses. We have a long campaign ahead of us. Every day is a slog, and that's what we continue to fight for. And if you look at his response, the responses he's receiving in Iowa, the crowds that he's seen, the people who are coming out in support of him, it really is tremendous. Look, you see the leaders. We always knew that Donald Trump was the leader. We've known that. We've known that this is a tough race. But you've seen those numbers come down. You've certainly seen the second place numbers come down, Ron DeSantis, and you've seen Tim Scott numbers go up. I believe that is not just a momentary thing. I think you'll see that as a trend, and it will continue. We're doing all of the work that we need to support Tim, and certainly his campaign is doing everything they have to do to get the message out.
And I should have clarified, those numbers were for Iowa Republican voters' preference for president as of now. I want to talk about the strategy so far, because Tim Scott is clearly, building his entire campaign around positivity, around not being negative and sort of this optimism that we have not seen. But it's not exactly working. And I do want to ask specifically about the indictments against former President Trump, because Senator Scott has not attacked him, has not explicitly even talked about these indictments against Trump. And I wonder why not?
Well, Tim's running his campaign. Tim Scott is presenting his case to the American people. He's not presenting Donald Trump's case. He's not presenting Ron DeSantis's case. He is presenting an optimistic, conservative message for the people of this country. Look, I think candidates spend a great deal of time trying to figure out how to be authentic. Tim doesn't need a poll to show what authenticity means. He is that. He exudes that. And to do anything other than an optimistic message for the people of this country, I think would send a sour note to people, voters in Iowa and New Hampshire and across the country. And so he is going to focus on his message. He is going to focus on his campaign, let the other races do what they will or go where they will go. But the fact is, Tim Scott can make this country feel good about itself again. Republicans and Democrats can come together under a message of opportunity and vision that Tim has, whether it's educational choice and opportunity, whether it's economic empowerment. That's what Tim Scott believes. And I think anything else would be off note. And that's why you see him stick to that message of positivity.
And doing that, in Iowa, in the community is one thing, but on the debate stage, as you very well know, is another, especially when he is going to be surrounded by other, Republican hopefuls who are ready to tear into it. I mean, do you think he's going to be able to maintain this, this messaging and this optimism without attacking?
Well, look, I don't think Tim Scott is not somebody who's going to attack somebody simply because he wants to get ahead of them in a race. He's going to share his differences. He's going to contrast the strengths and weaknesses of who he believes he is, where his message goes, and how he is a better leader, better situated, better suited to be president of the United States. That is going to be with conservative values. He's the most conservative person in this race. He is going to do it with positivity and optimism for this country. I think there is room in this nation for points of light instead of fear and attacks. And that's what I think you'll see Tim Scott do. Now, there's no doubt that this debate is going to draw some contrasts. And there's no doubt I have no doubt that Senator Scott will not be afraid to show those differences and those contrasts. And so if you're in Milwaukee on August 23rd, we look forward to you hearing this message from Tim Scott. And certainly, I think the people around the country are going to be surprised, impressed, and the day after we'll have even more support for Senator Scott, Tim Scott, going forward.
Well, no doubt he is preparing for the debate. You guys are clearly focused on Iowa for now, but talk to me about what comes after Iowa. What states are you going to be spending a lot of time in?
Yeah, look, I think spending a lot of time again in Iowa, spending a lot of time in New Hampshire. It's no surprise where he will turn to after the debates to talk about the great message that he shared. I know he's going to be across the country, coast to coast, leaving no corner of our country unturned and underexplored. This is an opportunity for Tim to really highlight what he talked about at the campaign, to go back into Iowa, to go across the counties and to share that message, to build on it, to expound on it. You heard him talk about the border at a recent visit to Yuma, Arizona. You'll hear him talk, I believe, about some of the most important issues facing this country at the debate. And in the days following, he will continue to expound on that in Iowa, New Hampshire, and beyond.
Well, we will be tracking it. Thank you so much, former Senator Cory Gardner. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Voters in Ohio are deciding whether to raise the threshold to amend their state's constitution. Next, we look at how the measure could have major implications on the future of abortion access in the Buckeye State. You're streaming America Decides.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Welcome back to America Decides. A special election in Ohio today has abortion taking center stage, even though it doesn't say so on the ballot. Voters are deciding on issue 1. If passed, the threshold of support to make an amendment to the state constitution would bump up from a majority to 60%. Today's vote only needs a majority. This comes ahead of a November ballot measure that will allow Ohioans to weigh in on whether abortion should be protected in the state constitution. A poll earlier this summer found that 58% of Ohio voters support the amendment protecting abortion access. CBS News reporter Kara Cordy joins us now from Columbus, Ohio. Kara, it's great to see you. Is this measure expected to pass today?
Well, Weija, I've talked to people behind the no vote and the yes vote, and they both say the same thing, that they're cautiously optimistic, which we're all used to hearing from operatives on Election Day. The biggest story of this election so far has been the historic early vote turnout. That's really positive for the people supporting the no vote, which by proxy are folks that are for abortion rights. I did speak to someone behind the no movement today, and he said that they have to win day of turnout in order to win this vote. He said in particular he would like to see no voters come out at least 6 to 8 points ahead today in order to take a victory home.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because here we are in a Tuesday in August. This is not when people are used to voting. This is the dead of summer. So what are you seeing in terms of the vote out physically today?
There has not been an August statewide election in Ohio for 100 years, Weija. It's pretty rare.
Well, that was Kara Cordy. She is in Columbus, Ohio for us, but we have lost her for now, and we will try to get her back. But that does it for today. You can stream America Decides Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.
It's a history-making meeting. 4 extraordinary women